curious, storytelling tone. The legend claims the Greeks launched 1,000 ships, besieged a city for 10 years, and infiltrated its walls with a massive wooden horse. The motive? The abduction of Helen, the Queen of Sparta. But bankrupting an empire and fighting a decade-long international war over a single romance defies the logic of ancient geopolitics. Records from the time, like the Linear B clay tablets found in Greece, confirm that warring kingdoms did seize women as commodities. Still, massive armies require vast resources, and a cross-sea invasion requires a far more practical payoff. The logistics of the Bronze Age point toward a much more pragmatic motive. Uncovering that reason requires looking past the poetic descriptions and analyzing the physical evidence of the conflict. That investigation starts in modern-day Turkey at an archaeological site called Hisarlik. These layered ruins are the physical remains of the real Troy. Excavations of the layers labeled Troy 6 and 7A reveal a city of super-regional importance. It was a dense commercial hub covering roughly 75 acres, shielded by massive limestone walls and sophisticated fortifications. And around 1200 BC, that massive city burned. The excavation layers from this period are packed with charred timbers, scattered human skeletons, and piles of unused slingstones stockpiled for an attack. The soil here leaves a little room for debate. A violent conflict destroyed the city. The question the dirt can't answer is why the Greeks crossed the Aegean Sea to light the match. This map reveals Troy's value. The city sat directly at the mouth of the Dardanelles. Merchant ships moving between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea had to pass this mandatory bottleneck. Waiting for favorable winds, Trojans monopolized the flow of horses, metals, and slaves. By controlling this single geographic choke point, you control the economic arteries of the known world. That immense wealth makes a city a permanent target for expanding empires. The biggest threat to Troy didn't necessarily come from the sea. To the east sat the dominant superpower of the era, the Hittite Empire, headquartered in central Anatolia. We know this region's politics because the Hittites kept meticulous diplomatic records on clay tablets. These archives record Troy as Wilusa and the Greeks as the Ahiawa. One document, the Tawagalawala letter, details a dispute over Wilusa, outlining a campaign of state-sponsored proxy warfare. The Mycenaeans actively backed local warlords in western Anatolia. They used these proxy fighters to harass Hittite-aligned states and destabilize regional kings without declaring open war. Troy operated as a heavily contested border state, caught and eventually crushed in an escalating Cold War between two expanding superpowers. If the real conflict consisted of sprawling proxy wars over trade routes, how did it become remembered as a 10-year siege over a stolen queen? This timeline illustrates a process called narrative compression. Ancient oral traditions routinely folded decades of complex border skirmishes, pirate raids, and trade disputes into a single cohesive storyline. The physical city of Troy 7A fell around 1180 BC, but Homer composed the Iliad around 750 BC. That leaves a transmission gap of roughly 400 years. 4 centuries of spoken storytelling naturally stripped away the dry economic realities of Bronze Age imperialism. Bards replaced trade deficits with gods and heroes to keep their audiences captivated. The myth of Helen ultimately provided the ancient Greeks with a heroic, moral justification for an invasion driven by greed and expansion. We can contrast the poetic fantasy of the Iliad with the harsh physical evidence left behind in the burned dirt of Hisarlik and the diplomatic clay tablets of Hattusa. The Trojan War happened because Troy was simply too wealthy and too strategically positioned to be left in peace. It proves that the struggle for global economic dominance is older than literature itself.